I got Ethiopian food. I got some kombucha. I got some coffee. It's a good day. Beautiful day. I hope you're well. Let me know what you're having for breakfast in the comments when you get a chance. So, the story of me and Ethiopian food. For those who don't know, I grew up in a mostly like black and Latino background. So, Ethiopian food was something I kind of found out later on in life. Like I was in probably college. I was surrounded by a lot of Ethiopian kids, but I don't know. We just didn't. I didn't get a chance to try the food. In the '90s, I might have just been priced out, to be completely honest. It's kind of a thing that happens. But now it's almost like my home away from home as far as food goes. I love the amazing flavors and just the opportunities of just amazingly spiced vegetables and different textures and stuff. It's actually pretty good. If you've never had it before, it'll change your life. I have this little local spot I go to in Rockville, and it's truly amazing. Like wonderful people, amazing food. It's always funny because like randomly, someone will start talking to me, in their native tongue, and I'm completely. I think it's like Farsi. Reading a message from Alec. I go to the art store today to get a bunch of stuff to work on the zine. I've reached almost the end of it. And then I have to put it all together and get published. Which is not the most difficult thing. Not at this juncture in my professional life, but it's still different. Lots of art talk going on in my comment and text section right now. So I have a spiced eggplant. I don't know how to say it in Farsi. I have some spiced eggplant. I have spiced tofu, which I put in. It did come with. Yellow lentils, red lentils, potatoes, and I believe some greens of some sort. It's just a really good food. The hard part is reheating any of this stuff is difficult because you kind of have to spread it out and let it cook evenly. So I always end up kind of eating cold food basically. But it's so good, it doesn't matter. So the majority of what I'm working on today is going to be core parts of the podcast. I'm going to work on finishing the pieces that I've already done. I felt like they were too plain, so I'm adding like backgrounds, more background stuff. I do a lot of foreground work. I'm not a big background guy. So I'm working on that today. It should be really good. I wish this was more entertaining. I don't know that I'm quite there today. I've been kind of distracted recently by all the things that are going on in Florida with people being arrested for voting. And I don't know how to turn that off. I guess it drives me crazy because like they arrested one lady and she even showed them her voter ID card. They arrested like 20 people. And oddly enough, almost all of them were black. And all of them were registered Democrats. So, it's kind of annoying. I don't think we have to share the same ideologies about voting and whatnot. I do think we need to address the factor, though, that there's a lot of racism and race-related things that people have kind of forced as issues by being horrible and racist. It's such a weird concept. I'm constantly bombarded by people who are like, oh, well, you know, if you look for racism, you'll find it. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, there's something to be said about the factor that, like, if you refuse to see it, you just don't see it. And it continues to be a problem, long-standing and otherwise. So much so that, you know, the people who were debating it 60 years ago, I could play you an excerpt from something they say. And other than the quality in which the recording sounds, you would think it was about what's going on right now. I was watching this documentary about Angela Davis. And she was saying she did not feel that they really won all the stuff that was going on with racism in America when they were trying to get these things changed because they're still the same issues. And that's someone who was there fighting the good fight. Still fighting the good fight. And doesn't feel like they accomplished what they set out to accomplish. Hi, producer Tom. And that's crushing. Because we're constantly told, you know, these things are better. Typically by people who don't want to be involved with conversations or anything going on. Then you get people who are very much actively a part of it. And they're saying, yeah, no, it's the same problem it's always been. It didn't change. It changed a little bit. I think in my eyes it changed a bit, but not as much as people who don't want to admit that it's a problem. I mean, most of those. I think the weirdest part that I ran across. I'll put this down. The weirdest part I ran across in the last couple of months was someone tried to tell me that that's the way everybody was. And so we have to take kind of the way history works with a grain of salt because it's typical of what was going on. But that is not true simply on the factor of when you look at historical retellings by people who were there were always opposition to these things that were going on. Like there were always oppositions to segregation. And that works in the art world, that works in music, that works in buses, that works in all these things. Life, liberty, generally. So it's always kind of frustrating when I hear people say to me, well, that was the time, and et cetera. And it's like, yeah, but there were civil rights activists even back then. Even before it was called civil rights, there were civil rights activists. There were, and I mean, it's not just black people. I mean, you hear it from like Native people and all these people. There was like the leader of the Blackfoot who literally made it so in DC in the 40s, 30s or 40s. He recorded himself. They recorded him speaking and singing and talking about his people. And he even was quoted saying, "I'm doing this so that my people can't be erased and forgotten throughout basically white history," is what he said. And in that, people hear it and they roll their eyes who don't want to listen, and in that, there were lots of white people who were like, no, 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 you are right. We should record this because this will go away. And they're playing them on these sound tubes. You should go to PBS. PBS has got all these great, like, little short snippets and, like, long movies and so on and so forth, just about the history of everything. And it's really fascinating. I find myself kind of in a time loop, just learning about all these things that I didn't know about beforehand, these specific little details. I knew about the events happening in history, but I didn't know the players, as it were. And I think a lot of times that's probably the biggest problem for that, is that it's been forcibly erased. Like, I still think one of the biggest things that people should probably ever learn about is like the Harlem Renaissance, because it was literally, they didn't want black people to have this giant culture, from their music to their business, growth, community, etc. Has to be said about like Native people and Asian people and Latinos, just everyone. They didn't want them to establish their own thing. Even Jewish people. I mean, I find it interesting that there's this painting, not this painting. There's this photograph called I think it's called like the steering. And it's this photo they used later on in the 1950s, about 20 years after the photo was taken, saying America is a country of immigrants. But the photo is literally like all these Jewish immigrants being put on boats and sent back to Europe because they deported a lot of people. They refused to let a lot of people come over. Or they let people work as temporary workers with visas. And they had to go back to Ireland. They had to go back to Wales. They dug ditches, they dug highways, they dug latrines, they dug everything. Much like a lot of black soldiers did when they went over to Europe for World War II. But my point is, the photo is a lie, basically. Or, no, the photo is not a lie, but the narrative behind it is a lie. Even though the author of the photographer wrote a lot of details about how, these people were people who were forced to be at the bottom of the boat. They were allowed to come up for fresh air, I think once or twice a day. And then, that was it. And they were being denied entry to Ellis Island. And you think about it, it's like you have all these skilled people with all this culture, and they were coming over to have a better life, to avoid all the horrors and famine and etc. that they were living in. And it was used to just kind of to basically push a dream that was not a dream at the time, but then reused later. And the funny thing is, people see it and they find the story and they think, okay, well, But I'm sure if they looked into it and they looked hard enough, the people who don't really care about it, they might even find somebody who they're related to in that photo. You know what I mean? Like somebody who was fleeing, someone, a cousin, an uncle, a grandfather, a grandmother, great or otherwise. The truth is, yes, we are a nation of immigrants. This is true. Whether that happened on purpose or by accident or was forced by the people who couldn't go back, might be another question. I just always find it interesting how history, there's not even, I hate when people say there's two sides of history. There aren't two sides of history. There's just the truth. There's truth and there's lies. And sometimes the lies are misunderstandings, and sometimes they're just straight up lies. I was shocked to find out they had a Nazi rally in the 20s in Madison Square Garden. There's microfilm of it. There's black and white film of they did it. And there were protesters. Once again, there were protesters outside who were very much against it. So, it's all very interesting. I want to do some type of painting about these things that I'm finding out. These historical revisions that are now being unearthed. I think it would be really interesting. I think art is oftentimes a reflection of kind of people's truths. I have quite a bit of truth to tell. And not even just as an Afro-Latino, but as a black man, as a first generation American, as a person of the Caribbean. I want to be the Baldwin of paint. Check it out. Paint it out.